Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to our random review. Today's random review is from Italy in 1961, and it's the Bandits of Orgosolo, directed by Vittorio de Seta, not Vittorio de Seta. This is a new Radiance release. I haven't talked about Radiance for a little while. This is spine number 56 and 57, because you also get The Lost World, which is 10 of De Seta's short films. He was a documentary filmmaker first, and these are 10 of his short films, but I'll get to that after we talk about the Bandits of Orgosolo. So you do get 2 discs, so The Lost World isn't put on the same disc as Bandits, which is really good. And as usual, you get a nice little booklet as well. As I said, De Seta was unknown to me, but he was a documentary filmmaker kind of first, and you can certainly see that influence. This is a simple story about a shepherd in Sardinia and his younger brother, who gets embroiled with nasty men who have stolen some pigs, and end up getting in a shootout and killing one of the carabinieri, and he gets, because he was kind of found in the same sort of region, even though he didn't do anything, he kind of gets tarred with the same brush, and it's essentially a chase film over the mountains of Sardinia. Again, as I've discovered with lots of Italian films that I've watched over the last few years, there's always something about the north-south divide. Sardinia is almost a country in itself, off of Italy in the southern end. It is very much the shepherds, which feature in one of the short films, one of the short documentaries, are very much of an older time, and the modernity hasn't quite reached them. The film does kind of remind me a little bit of Lonely the Brave with Kirk Douglas, which is also set in the 60s. I think that was actually the year after Bandits of Orgosolo, whereas Kirk Douglas still wants to be a cowboy, he still has a horse, he still rides a horse, even though the automobile is king by that time. And this film kind of reminds me a little bit of that, of these guys that are in the modern world but not really in the modern world. They have a distrust of authority, because again at one point the main character, Michel the shepherd, he has a chance to give himself up and prove that he had nothing to do with the death of the carabinieri, but he's kind of distrustful, and again it's all this kind of pressure of how do we survive, and you get a real sense of these are people that are clawing and fighting for every scrap that they have to support themselves and their family. So I mean, you could make the argument it is very much like Bicycle Thieves, but with sheep instead of a bicycle. An older man and his younger family member, in this case his young brother as opposed to his son, But I'm going to be controversial and actually say Bandits of Orgosolo is better than Bicycle Thieves. Obviously, Bicycle Thieves is a classic. I have it myself. But certainly, personally, Bicycle Thieves is one of those films that I used to give 5 out of 5, and it's now a 4 out of 5. Again, it's still a very important film, certainly in the Italian neorealism. But again, for me, it's just kind of come down a little bit over time, which is fair enough. But again, it's still a brilliant film. But Bandits of Orgosolo, again, it might just be recency bias, obviously, but it just absolutely blew me away. But one of the reasons is the print. It's a 4K restoration, and The Lost World, the 10 documentary short films, they've been restored as well, via no small part but the George Lucas Family Foundation. So again, George Lucas, very much like Scorsese, is involved in restoration projects, and again, that kind of outweighs his actual film output, or the films that he's been associated with over the last 30 years. But the print is absolutely stunning. It's a film that I don't think it would be as good in colour, but the black and white cinematography is absolutely stunning. Again, when it was released, I obviously didn't have a clue what it was, and I wasn't familiar with Vittorio de Seta in any way. But man, it is one of the best Blu-ray prints I've seen for a long time. So if you're, personally, if you're sitting on the fence about picking this up, I would urge you to get off that fence and pick it up, because it's absolutely stunning. Obviously, the Sardinian locations, it couldn't have been easy shooting the film, because it's a fairly unforgiving countryside. Plus, you are literally wrangling sheep. It's one of the great sheep films, great performances by the sheep, even though there are some distressing scenes if you are a sheep lover. In the end, the sheep almost become the countryside, the sheep almost become rocks themselves. But it's an absolutely ravishingly beautiful film. Again, part of it is the countryside, but De Seta's focus on faces. Again, some of the shepherds from Sardinia are in the film, they're not actors. And the main characters, again, it's just about those Italian faces. Obviously most of us were first exposed to Italian faces in spaghetti westerns, but there's just something about a weathered Italian face that's pretty unique, and those kind of close-ups of faces, there's not a ton of dialogue in the film, but kind of the close-up of those weather-beaten faces against such stunning scenery. The shots in it that are just ridiculously beautiful. They could be paintings, just black and white gorgeosity. So if you love black and white cinematography, it's an absolute stunner. It's almost on those films of Mikhail Kalatazov, Letter Never Sent and Cranes Are Flying and I Am Cuba, and his early documentary films as well. It's an absolutely stunning film. It is pretty brutal. Again, these people are literally surviving. If they lose their sheep, they can't live. The end of the film isn't necessarily upbeat and optimistic. There's people make comments about just being it's life, what are you going to do? We were kind of born desperate, and you do feel that desperation as the main character. The situation just gets worse and worse, and he just gets deeper and deeper into trouble. It almost becomes a metaphysical journey. I mean, there's comments about fate, and there's kind of nothing we can do about it. There is a wonderful fatalism in the film, which is maybe why I enjoyed it so much. It's just absolutely beautiful. As I said, it's one of those black and white films that I don't think would have been as good in colour. But saying that, The Lost World, which are these 10 documentary shorts, are in colour, and these look amazing as well. Again, most of these are 4K restorations, again with the help of the George Lucas Foundation throwing some money its way. We get The Age of the Swordfish. Again, most of these are about activities that don't really happen anymore. Like 2 years later, the sword fishing stopped. There is a scene about fishermen catching tuna. Tuna are quite big, which obviously some people might find disturbing because it's fairly bloody on both sides. But Age of the Swordfish, Islands of Fire, it's absolutely beautiful in the backdrop of a volcano. Surf Ararara, Easter in Sicily, Sea Countrymen, Golden Parable, which is in the wheat fields. This was, again, it's just ridiculously beautiful. Fishing Boats, Orgosolo's Shepherds, which is about the real shepherds, even though, as I said, some of them actually appear in the film Bandits of Orgosolo. A Day in Barbagia and The Forgotten. So all of them, apart from The Forgotten, are about 11 minutes long. The Forgotten's 21 minutes. And these are just, I mean, some releases, you see, short films included, and you kind of go, okay, and you watch them, and some, they're okay, but as far as being rewatchable, not all short films are made the same, and not all short films are rewatchable. But these De Seta films are just absolutely gorgeous. Lots of sunsets that are just golden. And again, they are kind of anthropological little thumbnails of a time past, of activities that don't generally happen anymore due to modernity again. Yeah, as I said, if you're on the fence about picking this up, I would highly recommend it. We haven't talked about Radiance for a little while, but this is an absolute stunner. As I said, I wasn't, blown away by the thought of it at release, just because I didn't have a clue who Vittorio de Seta is. But man, it's an absolutely spectacular film. Again, it's simple, but really effective. There's no convoluted subplots and all of that. It's just about people trying to struggle in a fairly unforgiving setting and unforgiving geography. And as I said, if you like sheep, it's one of the great sheep films. But don't worry, pig lovers, there's some pig action as well. But the sheep give wonderful performances. So thanks very much for watching this random review of a film from Italy. See, it's not all Japan here. So please let me know if you've seen the Bandits of Orgosolo and what you think of it. And hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitude Ronin from Solitude Ronin Films, saying farewell.